In the dust of forgotten cities, beneath layers of sand and stone, lies the heartbeat of one of humanity's oldest civilizations. India, a land where rivers once carried whispers of gods, where empires rose and fell like the tides of history, and where today more than 1 billion voices echo in the symphony of survival and ambition. This is not just a story of kings and conquerors, not just a tale of temples and trade. It is the story of resilience, of a civilization that has endured the test of time for over 5,000 years. From the mysterious seals of the Indus Valley to the golden courts of the Mughals, from the chains of British rule to the flames of independence, and now to the rising roar of a modern global power. This is the journey of India, ancient, eternal, and unstoppable. Stay with us as we unfold a saga that is not just history, but destiny itself. History, the Indus Valley civilization. Long before the pyramids cast their shadows on the sands of Egypt, long before Mesopotamia built its towering ziggurats, civilization flourished along the mighty rivers of the Indian subcontinent. The Indus Valley civilization, stretching from the fertile plains of Punjab to the coastal reaches of Gujarat, was one of the world's first great experiments in human society. Imagine vast cities rising from the dust, not chaotic clusters of huts, but carefully designed urban landscapes with straight roads, grid patterns, and sophisticated drainage systems that would astonish even today's city planners. In the heart of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, wide streets bustled with traders, farmers, potters, and artisans, each contributing to the rhythm of a society that valued order, trade, and innovation. As we peel back the layers of history, we do not just uncover bricks and artifacts. We uncover the pulse of a people who dared to imagine something greater than mere survival. The dream of civilization itself. The true marvel of the Indus Valley was not its size. Though it stretched across nearly 1 million square kilometers, making it larger than contemporary Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Its wonder lay in its unity, in the silent rhythm of its cities. Homes, built from uniform baked bricks, stood shoulder to shoulder with public wells, workshops, and granaries, signs of communal cooperation and shared purpose. Unlike other ancient civilizations that erected towering monuments to glorify kings and gods, the Indus people left behind no giant temples or statues. Instead, they left behind a legacy of equality, suggesting a society less obsessed with rulers and more focused on the collective well-being of its citizens. This was not a civilization of one man's ambition, but of an entire people's vision. It was a society built on harmony. One that reminds us that greatness is not always measured in conquest or monuments, but in the quiet genius of ordinary life. At the heart of this civilization pulsed the lifeblood of rivers, the Indus and its tributaries. Along their fertile banks, farmers cultivated barley, wheat, and peas, sustaining thriving populations. Domesticated cattle roamed the fields, while craftsmen shaped clay into pottery, carved intricate beads, and etched mysterious symbols onto seals that still baffle scholars today. These seals, adorned with images of bulls, elephants, and mythical creatures, may have been the signatures of merchants, passports of trade, or even tokens of faith. Through them, the Indus people spoke across time, though their language remains unbroken, a code we have yet to decipher. To imagine their lives is to hear the hammer of the bronze smith, the laughter of children at play, the chants of rituals around fire. It is to step into a world where humanity was learning how to live together, not just as families, but as a civilization. Trade was the thread that stitched the Indus Valley to the wider world. From the bustling streets of Mohenjo-daro, caravans carried precious goods, cotton textiles, beads of carnelian, ornaments of gold and silver. They crossed deserts and mountains, reaching the ports of Mesopotamia, where Sumerian scribes recorded their transactions with these mysterious Meluha people, believed to be none other than the Indus traders. In return came tin, copper, and luxury items fueling an economy that was both self-sufficient and globally connected. This exchange was not merely of goods, but of ideas, a silent dialogue between distant lands that enriched both. The Indus Valley was not isolated. It was part of the world's first web of global trade, a network that tied human destinies together in ways that still echo in our modern era of globalization. But as with all great stories, there came an ending. Around 1900 BCE, the great cities began to falter. Was it the shifting of rivers, robbing fields of their lifeblood? Was it climate change, drought, or floods that weakened their resolve? Or did invaders sweep in from the northwest, shattering their fragile order? The truth remains a mystery, but the silence of Mohenjo-daro's empty streets speaks volumes. The once thriving urban centers crumbled, and the people dispersed, leaving behind only fragments of pottery, broken seals, and the haunting skeletons of abandoned homes. Yet even in its decline, the Indus Valley did not vanish completely. Its spirit, its innovations, and its lessons in urban life and social harmony seeded the future civilizations of the subcontinent. The Indus may have fallen silent, but its echoes would reverberate across millennia, shaping what we now call India, the Mauryan and Gupta age classical India. After the decline of the Indus Valley, centuries of migrations, settlements, and cultural transformations laid the foundations of a new civilization. By the time Alexander the Great marched into the northwestern frontiers of India in 326 BCE, he found a land already brimming with kingdoms and traditions. But Alexander's retreat opened the door for something greater: the rise of the Mauryan Empire, founded by Chandragupta Maurya. From his capital at Pataliputra, a city teeming with palaces, gardens, and fortified walls, Chandragupta stitched together a vast empire stretching across most of the subcontinent, guided by the brilliant strategist Chanakya, author of the Arthashastra, a masterpiece of statecraft. The Mauryan Empire became the first true unifier of India. It was not just an empire of swords, but a vision, an attempt to bind diverse peoples, languages, and regions under one banner. For the first time, India stood as one. Yet it was under Chandragupta's grandson, Ashoka the Great, that the Mauryan legacy reached its zenith. Ashoka began as a conqueror, his armies thundering across India, leaving trails of destruction. But the carnage of the Kalinga War broke his spirit. Standing among corpses and widows, Ashoka's heart transformed. He laid down the sword and embraced Buddhism, becoming one of history's most remarkable examples of a ruler choosing peace over war. From that moment, Ashoka's reign became a beacon of compassion. He built stupas, carved edicts on stone pillars across his empire, and sent missionaries as far as Sri Lanka and Central Asia to spread the teachings of nonviolence and tolerance. Under Ashoka, India became not just a land of power, but of moral authority. His message that true strength lies not in conquest but in humanity still resonates across the ages. When the Mauryan Empire eventually faded, India entered centuries of fragmentation, yet from this chaos rose another golden age, the Gupta dynasty. Emerging around the 4th century CE, the Guptas revived the idea of unity. Not through brute conquest, but through a flourishing of culture, science, and art. The Gupta age is often called India's classical era, a time when Sanskrit literature blossomed, when poets like Kalidasa composed works of unmatched beauty, and when scholars advanced astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. It was here that Aryabhata calculated the value of pi and theorized about the Earth's rotation, while physicians wrote treatises that guided healing for centuries. In temples adorned with exquisite carvings and paintings, the spirit of Indian philosophy and creativity found expression. If the Mauryas gave India unity, the Guptas gave it identity, a cultural soul that still defines the nation. This period was also one of profound religious and philosophical innovation. Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism coexisted, influencing each other in temples, monasteries, and debates that echoed through universities like Nalanda and Takshashila, ancient centers of learning that attracted students from across Asia. The concept of dharma, righteous duty, and karma, the cycle of cause and effect, shaped not only religion but also daily life, politics, and ethics. Art and architecture mirrored these ideals, from towering Hindu temples to the serene faces of Buddha carved in stone. It was a time when spiritual exploration blended seamlessly with intellectual pursuit, reminding the world that India's greatness lay not just in empire, but in ideas, in a civilization's eternal quest to understand existence itself. But no golden age lasts forever. Waves of invasions swept across the subcontinent. Huns, Scythians, and other Central Asian powers tested India's resilience. The Gupta Empire eventually fragmented, its brilliance dimmed by political instability and external threats. Yet, like the Indus Valley before it, the essence of this age never truly vanished. Its mathematics, its literature, its philosophies became the seeds of future renaissances in India and beyond. The world still owes the concept of zero, the decimal system, and much of its philosophical depth to this age. The Mauryas gave India the idea of unity. The Guptas gifted it an enduring cultural identity. And together they carved a legacy that would prepare the land for the next great epoch, the arrival of new faiths, new dynasties, and the dawn of the Delhi Sultanate and Mughal grandeur, the Mughals, the British Raj, and the struggle for independence. In 1526, the thunder of cannons echoed across the plains of Panipat. Babur, a warrior from Central Asia, faced the mighty Lodi dynasty of Delhi, with discipline, strategy, and firearms unknown to many in India. Babur secured victory and laid the foundations of the Mughal Empire, a dynasty that would shape India for the next 3 centuries. What followed was not just an empire of swords, but of gardens, art, and vision. Akbar, the great Babur's grandson, extended the empire from the Himalayas to the Deccan Plateau, ruling over millions with a vision of unity. His court at Fatehpur Sikri became a crucible of culture, where Hindu and Muslim, Persian and Rajput came together in dialogue. Painters, musicians, architects, and poets thrived, crafting a golden age where the soul of India was reimagined as a mosaic of diversity. The Mughals were not merely rulers. They were dreamers who sought to build eternity in marble and ink. Nowhere was this dream more vividly etched than in architecture. The Mughals transformed India's skylines with domes that kissed the heavens, minarets that pointed to infinity, and palaces that shimmered like jewels. Shah Jahan's Taj Mahal, a monument to eternal love, still stands as one of humanity's most breathtaking creations. Its white marble glowing under moonlight, like a dream carved from eternity. But beyond grandeur, the Mughal period was also about everyday life. Markets bustling with spices and silks, caravans threading through deserts, and poets reciting verses that would echo for centuries. Music flourished in the ragas of Tanzan. Painting bloomed in miniature art, and cuisine blended Persian richness with Indian flavor, creating dishes we still savor today. Yet beneath this grandeur lay the cracks of power struggles, succession wars, the simmering discontent of subjects who felt burdened by taxes and oppression. By the 18th century, those cracks widened. The Mughal Empire weakened after Aurangzeb's long reign, his orthodoxy alienating allies and draining resources. Regional powers, the Marathas in the west, the Sikhs in the north, the Nawabs of Bengal, rose from the shadows. Into this fractured landscape stepped a new force, the British East India Company. What began as merchants trading spices and textiles soon turned into conquest. The Battle of Plassey in 1757 marked the dawn of British dominance. With cunning, diplomacy, superior weaponry, and ruthless exploitation, The British dismantled Indian powers one by one. By the 19th century, the subcontinent was no longer ruled from Delhi's Red Fort, but from the colonial offices of London. The jewel in the crown of the British Empire was born. But at the cost of India's sovereignty, colonial India was a paradox. On one hand, the British built railways, telegraphs, and modern institutions. On the other, they drained India's wealth to feed their empire. Once the world's richest land, India became synonymous with poverty and famine. The weavers of Bengal, who had clothed the world, saw their looms silenced by imported British textiles. Famines killed millions, while raw materials were siphoned to Britain, leaving Indians to struggle in their own land. Yet, amid oppression, seeds of resistance sprouted. The revolt of 1857, sparked by soldiers but fueled by farmers, artisans, and princes, shook the British to their core. Though crushed, it ignited a spirit that would never die, the dream of freedom. From that moment, India was no longer just a colony. It was a nation waiting to awaken. The awakening came in the 20th century. Leaders like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Rabindranath Tagore, and later Mahatma Gandhi gave voice to India's yearning. Gandhi, with his philosophy of nonviolence and civil disobedience, turned salt into a symbol of rebellion, marches into weapons stronger than guns, and silence into thunder that shook an empire. The Indian National Congress, once a forum for polite dialogue, became the rallying ground for mass movements. Jallianwala Bagh, where British bullets tore through peaceful protesters, became a scar that fueled resistance. The struggle was long, filled with sacrifice from Bhagat Singh's martyrdom to Subhas Chandra Bose's defiance, but it united millions across religion, caste, and language. Finally, on August 15, 1947, as the clock struck midnight, Jawaharlal Nehru declared India's tryst with destiny. The chains of colonialism broke, and an ancient civilization stood reborn as a modern nation. Yet independence came with heartbreak, the partition, rivers of blood, and millions displaced. Freedom had arrived, but at a cost that still haunts the subcontinent: culture, language, literature, and philosophy. To understand India is to listen, not just to its people, but to its languages. Across the subcontinent, words rise and fall like waves in a symphony, carrying centuries of memory. From the ancient chants of Sanskrit hymns echoing in temples to the lyrical flow of Urdu poetry whispered under starlit skies, India's linguistic heritage is as vast as its geography. Today, more than 1,600 languages and dialects are spoken, making it one of the most linguistically diverse regions on Earth. Sanskrit, one of the world's oldest languages preserved in the Vedas and Upanishads, laid the foundations of philosophy and science. Meanwhile, Prakrits carried the voice of the common people. And later, languages like Hindi, Bengali, Tamil, Telugu, Punjabi, and Marathi became the tongues of millions. Each language is more than a tool of communication. It is an archive of a people's soul, a map of their dreams and struggles. From these languages blossomed literature, works that still inspire awe across the centuries. In the Mahabharata and Ramayana, we find not just epic battles and divine interventions, but profound reflections on duty, morality, and destiny. The Bhagavad Gita, a dialogue on life and purpose spoken on the battlefield, continues to guide seekers around the globe. Later, poets like Kalidasa painted worlds of love and longing in Sanskrit, while Tamil poets of the Sangam age etched verses on nature, valor, and devotion that remain unmatched in their beauty. In the medieval era, Sufi saints and Bhakti poets Kabir, Mira, Tulsidas wove verses that bridged faiths, dissolving walls between Hindu and Muslim, elite and poor. And in modern times, Rabindranath Tagore's words won India its first Nobel Prize in Literature, while writers like Premchand captured the raw struggles of ordinary people. Each line, Each verse is a window into the evolving heart of India. Philosophy in India was never confined to ivory towers. It lived in forests, in ashrams, in the minds of sages and seekers who questioned existence itself. The Upanishads asked, "Who are we? What is reality?" Jain philosophers preached ahimsa, nonviolence, centuries before the world would adopt it. Buddhists meditated on suffering and compassion, spreading their insights across Asia. Schools of Hindu philosophy like Vedanta, Samkhya, and Yoga offered profound understandings of consciousness and the cosmos, influencing not only India, but thinkers across Greece, China, and the modern West. Even materialist schools like Charvaka, which denied gods and afterlife, flourished alongside spiritual traditions, proving that India has always welcomed diverse ideas. Philosophy here was not abstract speculation. It was a way of life, guiding kings and commoners alike. It sought not just knowledge, but wisdom, a harmony between the self, society, and the universe. The beauty of Indian thought is its inclusivity. Unlike rigid systems that silence dissent, India's intellectual tradition thrived on debate and dialogue. In royal courts, philosophers would challenge each other for days, sometimes weeks, exploring the nature of truth. Sufi mystics sang of divine love in ways that blurred the boundaries of religion. Bhakti saints declared that God lived not in rituals, but in compassion. The coexistence of so many schools of thought, from the ascetic monk meditating in the Himalayas to the poet reciting verses in a bustling bazaar, created a tapestry where contradiction itself was celebrated. It is this openness, this willingness to ask questions rather than dictate answers, that has allowed India's philosophy to remain alive and relevant across millennia. Today, India's languages, literature, philosophies continue to evolve, blending ancient with modern. Bollywood films borrow from epics and folklore, while contemporary authors like Arundhati Roy and Salman Rushdie give India a global voice. Yoga, once practiced by ascetics in forests, is now embraced from New York to Tokyo. Ancient philosophical concepts like karma and mindfulness shape conversations in psychology and wellness worldwide. Yet, at its core, India's cultural heartbeat remains rooted in its diversity of voices. In every poem recited in a village, in every debate held in a classroom, in every story told by a grandmother under the stars, the legacy of millennia lives on. India's culture is not a relic of the past. It is a living river, ever flowing, carrying with it the wisdom of generations and the promise of tomorrow. Music, dance, festivals, and spiritual traditions. If language is the soul of India, then music is its heartbeat. Across centuries, India's music has been less about entertainment and more about transcendence, a journey from the material to the divine. The ancient scriptures spoke of Nada Brahma, the belief that the universe itself is sound. From this philosophy emerged the ragas of classical music, melodic frameworks so intricate that each could evoke specific emotions, times of day, and even seasons. In the north, Hindustani classical music grew under Mughal patronage, blending Persian influence with Vedic traditions, producing masters like Tanzan, whose voice was said to light lamps and summon rain. In the south, Carnatic music thrived with devotional compositions dedicated to gods, its rhythms and improvisations weaving a bridge between the human and the eternal. Even today, when a sitar strings its notes or a tabla beats its rhythm, it is not merely sound, it is India remembering itself. Just as music spoke in notes, dance spoke in movements. Classical dance forms like Bharatanatyam, Kathak, Odissi, Kathakali, Manipuri, Kuchipudi, and Mohiniyattam are not mere performances but living scriptures. Each gesture, each step, each glance carries symbolic meaning, narrating stories of gods, epics, and moral truths. Bharatanatyam, born in Tamil temples, captures devotion through geometric grace, while Kathak, which flourished in Mughal courts, is a whirl of spins and storytelling. Kathakali, with its painted faces and elaborate costumes, transforms the dancer into mythological beings, blurring the line between theater and ritual. In villages, folk dances like Bhangra, Garba, and Lavani celebrate harvests, marriages, and everyday joys. In every corner of India, dance has been less about performance and more about participation, a communal celebration where the body becomes a vessel of story and spirit. Festivals are the grand theaters where music and dance merge with faith and joy. India celebrates more festivals than there are days in a year, each a kaleidoscope of colors, sounds, and rituals. Diwali, the festival of lights, transforms cities into oceans of lamps, symbolizing the triumph of good over evil. Holi, the festival of colors, erases divisions as people smear each other with vibrant powders, laughter echoing through the streets. Eid fills homes with prayers and feasts. Christmas rings with carols and midnight masses, while Vaisakhi and Pongal honor harvests with dance and gratitude. These are not just religious events. They are moments when the nation pauses to remember that diversity is not a weakness, but its greatest strength. At Te Fridi Strength, every festival is a reminder that India's story is a shared one, told in countless languages, but understood by all. At the heart of these celebrations lies spirituality, the invisible thread weaving India together. From the icy peaks of the Himalayas to the sunlit ghats of Varanasi, faith has always been central to Indian life. Hinduism, with its countless deities and philosophies, thrives alongside Buddhism's meditations, Jainism's vows of nonviolence, Islam's devotion, Sikhism's equality, Christianity's compassion, and countless tribal faiths tied to the rhythms of nature. Pilgrimages like the Kumbh Mela, which draws millions to bathe in sacred rivers, symbolize both devotion and the collective spirit of humanity. Ashrams and Sufi shrines, temples and mosques, gurudwaras and churches. India is a land where the divine takes many forms, where seekers come not only to pray, but to experience the mystery of existence itself. What makes India unique is that spirituality here is not confined to rituals, but embedded in daily life. Lighting a lamp at dusk, touching the feet of elders, offering food before meals, singing lullabies that are prayers in disguise. These are gestures that connect the mundane to the sacred. Festivals, music, and dance are not separate from life, they are life itself, woven into its fabric. In an age where the world rushes forward, India pauses to celebrate, to remember, to give thanks. These traditions, ancient yet evolving, keep the culture alive, not as relics of the past, but as living, breathing expressions of joy and faith. Through every festival celebrated, every raga sung, every dance performed, India continues to affirm a timeless truth that existence itself is a celebration. Cuisine, art, and architecture. To walk through an Indian market is to step into a carnival of aromas. Spices, saffron glowing like fire, cardamom sweet as perfume, chili sharp as lightning, fill the air with intoxicating promise. Indian cuisine is not just food. Memory, geography, and history served on a plate. Each region tells its own story through taste. In the north, tandoori breads and rich gravies simmer with Mughal influence. In the south, tangy tamarind, coconut, and curry leaves dance in fragrant stews. In the east, mustard oil flavors fish and rice, while in the west, sweetness mingles with spice in Gujarati thalis. For centuries, India's kitchens absorbed flavors from invaders, traders, and travelers, Persian kebabs, Portuguese chilies, British teas, yet transformed them into something unmistakably Indian. To eat here is not simply to fill the stomach. It is to taste the journey of civilizations. Food is also celebration. Weddings sparkle with endless feasts, festivals overflow with sweets, and even daily meals are rituals of community. Sharing food in India is an act of love and hospitality. Whether it's the langar in a Sikh gurdwara, where strangers sit side by side eating simple meals of lentils and bread, or a grandmother's kitchen, where recipes are guarded like treasures passed down through generations. Street vendors in cities turn alleys into theaters of taste, frying samosas until they crackle golden, stirring chai until its aroma seeps into the night air, serving pani puri that bursts with tangy delight. In every meal lies a story of survival, adaptation, and generosity. Food here is not only nourishment, it is the poetry of everyday life. If cuisine is poetry of taste, then art is poetry of sight. Indian art has been a canvas of its soul for millennia, from the prehistoric cave paintings of Bhimbetka to the delicate brushstrokes of Mughal miniatures. Hindu temples glow with intricate carvings of gods and celestial dancers, their stone walls alive with myth and rhythm. Buddhist stupas like Sanchi tell entire epics through sculpted gateways. In the medieval age, Mughal painters blended Persian finesse with Indian themes, producing vibrant manuscripts where elephants marched beside emperors and lovers met under flowering trees. Folk art to Madhubani from Bihar, Warli from Maharashtra, Patachitra from Orissa continues to thrive, telling stories of gods, harvests, and daily life. Each brushstroke, each carving, is a dialogue between people and their beliefs, between imagination and eternity. Architecture, perhaps more than any other art, defines India's horizons. From the soaring temples of Khajuraho, sculpted with divine passion, to the rock-cut caves of Ajanta and Ellora, where Buddhas meditate in eternal silence, architecture here has always been sacred storytelling. Islamic domes and minarets added grace to the skyline, culminating in masterpieces like the Red Fort, Humayun's tomb, and the incomparable Taj Mahal. Later, colonial architecture brought grand Victorian buildings, railway stations, and universities, which still stand as reminders of another era. But beyond monuments, Indian homes themselves tell stories, from the mud-walled huts of villages to the Havalis of Rajasthan, with their courtyards and frescoes. Architecture in India has never been only about shelter. It has been about identity, community, and belonging. Today, the fusion continues. Modern India builds skyscrapers in Mumbai and futuristic IT hubs in Bangalore, yet still bows to tradition in temples that echo with centuries-old chants and in palaces that glow under desert suns. Artists mix traditional motifs with modern mediums. Chefs reinvent ancient recipes for global tables, and architects blend glass and steel with arches and courtyards that recall history. What unites all of this is continuity, a refusal to let go of the past even while embracing the future. In cuisine, in art, in architecture, India speaks in many voices, but the message is one that culture is not frozen in time. It grows, adapts, and breathes, carrying forward a legacy as old as the Indus Valley and as modern as tomorrow's skyline. Economy, agriculture, trade, and ancient wealth. From the very beginning, India's economy was born from the soil. The Indus Valley civilization thrived because of fertile lands watered by the Indus and its tributaries, where barley, wheat, peas, and cotton were cultivated in abundance. Farmers devised irrigation systems, canals, and granaries, showing not only ingenuity but a collective vision for sustainability. As centuries passed, the Gangetic Plains became the breadbasket of the subcontinent, producing rice and sugarcane, crops that would travel across the world. Cotton, grown in India since 5,000 years ago, clothed empires far beyond its borders. The Greeks marveled at India's trees that grew wool, while later, Europeans would fight over its fabrics. Agriculture was not merely survival. It was prosperity, the foundation of India's reputation as a land of abundance. The rhythm of the plow and the monsoon's arrival dictated the heartbeat of the nation. Trade was the second pillar of India's ancient wealth. from Harappan merchants sailing to Mesopotamia with beads and textiles. Two Mauryan caravans moving along highways guarded by imperial patrols. Commerce connected India to the world. The silk routes carried spices, gems, and philosophies from Mauryan case philosophies from India to China and Rome, while ships rode the monsoon winds across the Arabian Sea, laden with pepper, cinnamon, pearls, and ivory. Roman senators once lamented the empire's obsession with Indian luxuries, claiming that Rome was being drained of gold in exchange for silks and spices. In truth, India was not merely a consumer of global trade, but a driver of it, its goods, so prized that they fueled economies across continents. Ports like Lothal, Mauryas, and later Calicut became legendary centers of commerce. Humming with voices in dozens of languages, the wealth of India was not just in its trade routes or fertile lands, but in its natural resources. Gold from Karnataka, diamonds from Golconda, spices from Kerala, and textiles from Bengal created an economy envied by the world. For centuries, travelers described India as a land of unimaginable riches. Persian chroniclers spoke of markets overflowing with silks and jewels. Arab traders referred to India as the land of wonders. Marco Polo, visiting in the 13th century, declared its kingdoms among the richest in the world. These were not exaggerations. India's share of global GDP hovered near a third of the world's total for much of recorded history. While Europe struggled in its dark ages, India was the golden dream, a place kings and merchants sought, a land where wealth seemed eternal. Yet this prosperity was not without complexity. Agricultural wealth depended heavily on monsoons. Their bounty could bring plenty, but their absence could bring famine. Trade, too, was both opportunity and vulnerability. Ports opened India to the world, but also to invasions and exploitation. The lure of Indian wealth brought conquerors from Central Asia, traders from Arabia, and eventually colonial powers from Europe. Spices and textiles that once symbolized abundance would later become chains of dependency under colonialism. Still, through rise and fall, India's economic resilience endured. Farmers adapted to shifting climates, merchants reinvented routes, artisans found ways to keep their crafts alive. Even in times of decline, the hum of economic life never truly fell silent. Perhaps what made India's ancient economy unique was its integration of wealth with culture. Trade was not just about material goods, but about ideas. Buddhism traveled with merchants to East Asia, while Indian numerals transformed global mathematics. Agriculture was tied to festivals, harvests celebrated with songs, dances, and rituals that honored both earth and sky. Well-funded temples and learning centers, sustaining not just material prosperity, but spiritual and intellectual growth. The economy was never an isolated system. It was woven into the fabric of life, connecting the sacred with the practical. This holistic approach allowed India's wealth to endure for millennia, creating a civilization that was not only rich in gold and grain, but in wisdom and wonder. Medieval industries, colonial drain, and exploitation. As the medieval period dawned, India's economy entered an age of specialization and refinement. The Delhi Sultanate and later the Mughal Empire transformed the land into an intricate web of markets, guilds, and industries. Bengal's muslin was so fine it was said to pass through a ring. Kashmiri shawls were treasured in courts from Persia to France. And steel from South India, known as woods, steel gave rise to the legendary Damascus blades. Urban centers like Delhi, Lahore, and Ahmedabad grew into industrial hubs, their bazaars shimmering with textiles, jewelry, spices, and art. The Mughal land revenue system, though heavy at times, also ensured productivity and efficiency. Under Akbar and Shah Jahan, India's economy was vast and complex, integrating agriculture with flourishing crafts and a booming global trade network. In the 17th century, the Mughal Empire accounted for nearly a quarter of the world's GDP. An economic powerhouse rivaled by none, but prosperity attracted eyes from far beyond India's borders. The Portuguese, Dutch, French, and most significantly, the British, all arrived at India's shores under the guise of trade. At first, they were mere merchants at Indian ports, awed by the wealth and sophistication they witnessed. The East India Company, granted trading rights in the early 1600s, grew from a humble enterprise into a political force. Through cunning diplomacy, manipulation of local rulers, and ruthless military campaigns, the company transformed from traders into overlords. The same ports that once carried spices and silks across the seas now carried away treasures to London. India, once exporter of prosperity, began to bleed wealth to foreign masters. The balance of trade tilted, and the seeds of economic exploitation were planted. Colonial rule restructured India's economy to serve imperial interests. The thriving industries that had made India famous were deliberately dismantled. British manufacturers could not compete with Indian textiles, so they imposed tariffs, destroyed looms, and flooded Indian markets with machine-made goods from Manchester. Artisans who had once clothed the world were reduced to poverty. Agriculture, too, was reshaped. Farmers were forced into cash crops like indigo, cotton, and opium, not for local sustenance, but for global markets. Famines, once occasional, now became catastrophic, as grain was exported even while millions starved. The infamous Bengal famine of 1943, in which millions perished, was not just a natural disaster, but a man-made tragedy, engineered by policies that prioritized war and empire over Indian lives. The economic drain was staggering. Historians estimate that by siphoning off resources, revenues, and trade surpluses, Britain drained trillions of dollars worth of wealth from India over nearly 2 centuries. The jewel in the crown of the British Empire was, in reality, a bleeding wound that enriched London while impoverishing Calcutta. Railways, often celebrated as a colonial gift, were primarily built to extract raw materials and transport troops, not to develop India's economy. Education systems were designed not to empower, but to create clerks for colonial administration. India's share of global GDP fell from nearly 24% in 1700 to under 4% by the time of independence. The land once called the Golden Bird had its wings clipped, its treasures stolen, and its industries shattered. Yet even in this darkest period, sparks of resilience remained. Farmers continued to toil. Artisans found ways to preserve their crafts in hidden corners, and underground economies kept local trade alive. More importantly, the economic exploitation gave rise to political awakening. The drain of wealth became a rallying cry for leaders like Dadabhai Naoroji, who exposed the plunder of India in British Parliament. Gandhi's spinning wheel symbolized resistance, a call to revive indigenous industry and reject colonial imports. The struggle for independence was not only political but economic, a fight to reclaim dignity, self-reliance, and the right to shape India's own destiny. The centuries of exploitation left deep scars, but they also planted the seeds of a new determination, one that would shape the birth of a modern nation, post-independence, recovery, and modern growth. When India achieved independence in 1947, the new nation stood free but broken. Centuries of exploitation had left its economy fragile, industries hollowed out, and agriculture barely feeding its people. Partition had torn apart trade networks and displaced millions, adding chaos to an already battered system. Infrastructure, while impressive in scale, was designed for extraction, not development. India's leaders faced a monumental task to rebuild an economy from ashes while uniting a divided land. The first decades were defined by the vision of self-reliance. Under Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, India adopted a mixed economy, inspired by socialist ideals but rooted in democratic governance. Large public sector industries were built, from steel plants to dams, which Nehru called the temples of modern India. It was a bold attempt to harness the nation's vast resources for collective growth. Agriculture became the lifeline of recovery. But food shortages were severe in the early years, forcing India to rely on imports and foreign aid. The breakthrough came with the Green Revolution of the 1960s and 1970s. Led by scientists like M.S. Swaminathan, high-yield seeds, irrigation projects, and fertilizer use transformed India from a famine-prone country to a food-secure nation. Wheat fields in Punjab and rice paddies in Haryana became symbols of self-sufficiency. While the Green Revolution saved millions from hunger, it also introduced inequalities and ecological challenges that India continues to grapple with. Still, it marked a turning point. Agriculture had once again become the backbone of survival, just as it had been in the Indus Valley thousands of years before. By the late 20th century, India's economic model faced stagnation. The license Raj, a maze of regulations and bureaucracy, stifled innovation and enterprise. Growth was sluggish, unemployment high, and foreign reserves dangerously low. In 1991, a severe balance of payments crisis pushed India to the brink of collapse. Out of desperation came transformation. Finance Minister Manmohan Singh, under Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, launched sweeping economic reforms. Import restrictions were eased, industries were deregulated, and foreign investment was welcomed. Liberalization opened the gates of opportunity. India, once inward-looking, began to integrate into the global economy. The 1990s became the dawn of a new era, one of entrepreneurship, globalization, and technological ambition. The impact was dramatic. By the 2000s, India emerged as a hub of information, technology, and services, with Bangalore dubbed the Silicon Valley of Asia. Outsourcing, software development, and call centers connected India to the global digital economy. Alongside, industries like pharmaceuticals, textiles, and automobiles expanded. A new middle class rose, with aspirations for education, mobility, and prosperity. Growth rates soared, foreign reserves swelled, and India became a member of the G20. No longer a nation of scarcity, but one of ambition. Yet beneath the glittering skyscrapers, challenges persisted. Poverty, rural underdevelopment, corruption, and inequality. The economic miracle was uneven, but it placed India firmly on the map as a rising power. Today, India stands at a crossroads. With a population of over 1.4 billion, it is the world's largest democracy and among the fastest-growing major economies. Startups thrive, digital payments leapfrog traditional banking, and renewable energy projects aim to redefine sustainability. India is now the world's fifth-largest economy, surpassing its former colonial master, Britain. But the journey is far from over. Challenges of unemployment, climate change, and resource distribution loom large. Still, the resilience of its economy mirrors the resilience of its people. From the fertile plains of the Indus to the buzzing IT corridors of Bengaluru, India's economy has endured exploitation, crises, and transformation to emerge stronger. Its story is not just about numbers and policies, it is about survival, reinvention, and the unshakable spirit of a civilization determined to rise again. Current situation, politics, and governance. India today is the world's largest democracy, a living, breathing experiment of governance on a scale humanity has never attempted before. Over 900 million people are eligible to vote, casting their ballots in elections that span weeks, involving mountains, deserts, jungles, and megacities. The sheer act of conducting an election in India is itself a logistical marvel, one that testifies to the resilience of democratic institutions. From the parliament in New Delhi to the village panchayats in rural heartlands, governance is woven into the very fabric of Indian life. Yet democracy here is not a simple tale of ballots. And laws, it is a theater of passion, conflict, and diversity. India's politics is a symphony of voices, from farmers demanding rights, to women fighting for representation, to youth shaping the discourse of tomorrow. Since independence, India has been guided by a secular constitution crafted under the leadership of B.R. Ambedkar. It promised equality, liberty, and justice in a land fractured by centuries of hierarchy and colonial rule. Yet, the political journey has been tumultuous. From Nehru's vision of a socialist democracy to Indira Gandhi's era of centralization and emergency. From coalition governments of the 1990s to the current era of strong majority leadership, India's democracy has reinvented itself many times. The rise of the Bharatiya Janata Party (BJP) under Narendra Modi has marked a new phase, emphasizing nationalism, development, and global ambition. Critics warn of growing polarization, while supporters hail decisive leadership. In this dynamic dance of democracy, India remains unpredictable, yet steadfast in its commitment to the ballot. Governance in India faces immense challenges. Corruption has long been a shadow over political life, with scandals shaking public trust. Bureaucratic red tape slows progress, while inequality demands constant attention. The diversity of India, with its 22 official languages, dozens of states, and hundreds of ethnicities, makes policymaking a delicate balancing act. A decision that empowers one region can spark protests in another. And yet, this same diversity is also India's strength. Federalism allows local voices to thrive, while central institutions ensure unity in moments of crisis. The tension between regionalism and nationalism, tradition and modernity, has defined Indian governance for decades and continues to do so today. In recent years, India has embraced technology to transform governance. The Aadhaar system, the world's largest biometric identification project, has revolutionized welfare delivery, linking subsidies and benefits directly to citizens. Digital platforms have brought government services to rural villages, while online activism has created new spaces for accountability. At the same time, debates over privacy, surveillance, and free speech intensify. Social media has become both a tool of empowerment and a weapon of disinformation. The question facing India is not just how to govern its vast population, but how to ensure that governance remains just, inclusive, and democratic in an age of rapid technological change. Through all its turbulence, India's democracy endures, flawed, messy, vibrant, and alive. It is a system where farmers march on highways to demand their rights, where activists raise voices for justice, where courts challenge governments, and where the common citizen can, with a single vote, change the course of history. No other nation on earth attempts democracy at such scale, with such diversity, under such pressure. And yet, India persists. Its politics may be polarized, its governance may be strained, but its democratic spirit is unbroken. As the nation looks to the future, its greatest strength lies not in any single leader or party, but in the unyielding conviction of its people that their voices matter, and that the story of India will always be written by them. Conflicts, security, and regional challenges. India's story today is not only one of growth and ambition, but also of conflict and resilience. Within its borders, India grapples with fault lines carved by history, geography, and identity. Insurgencies in the northeast, Maoist movements in central forests, and demands for autonomy in regions long neglected are reminders that unity is a constant struggle. Religious tensions sometimes flare into violence, exposing the fragility of coexistence in a nation where faith is woven into daily life. Kashmir, the crown of the Himalayas, remains the most volatile fault line, a land of beauty scarred by decades of conflict, insurgency, and border disputes. These internal challenges are not mere statistics. They are lived realities for millions, shaping how India balances freedom, security, and democracy beyond its borders. India faces a neighborhood fraught with challenges. With Pakistan, relations remain tense, shadowed by wars fought since partition and ongoing disputes over Kashmir. Ceasefires along the line of control are fragile, and skirmishes often test the limits of peace. With China, the rivalry is equally sharp. The two giants bound by ancient ties now compete as global powers. Border clashes in the high Himalayas, such as the deadly confrontation in Galwan Valley in 2020, remind the world that Asia's rising powers are not immune to conflict. Meanwhile, instability in Afghanistan, maritime competition in the Indian Ocean, and ties with Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh create a complex web of diplomacy where India must walk carefully, balancing influence with caution. Terrorism has been one of India's gravest security concerns. The attacks of 26/11 in Mumbai in 2008, when militants stormed hotels, a train station, and a Jewish center, left scars that still haunt the nation. In response, India strengthened its counter-terrorism apparatus, increasing intelligence, coordination, and upgrading security forces. Yet the threat remains, evolving with technology and geopolitics. Cyber warfare, radicalization, and cross-border infiltration demand vigilance at every moment. India's armed forces, among the largest in the world, remain on constant alert, not just at its borders, but across its vast homeland. Security in India is not abstract. It is a daily commitment, a shield that allows 1 billion lives to go on despite the shadows. The Indian military is both a symbol of national pride and a guardian of sovereignty. With over 1.4 million active personnel, nuclear capabilities, and a rapidly modernizing arsenal, India stands as one of the world's most formidable powers. Yet, unlike many militarized nations, India has remained committed to civilian democracy. The army serves the people, not the rulers. This discipline has allowed India to focus not on military dominance, but on defensive strength, ensuring stability in a turbulent region. Still, the cost is immense. Defense spending competes with development needs, forcing leaders to constantly balance guns and bread, security and welfare. India's greatest conflict, however, may not be on its borders, but within its soul. How does a nation of such diversity maintain harmony in the face of divisions? How does it ensure that economic growth lifts the poorest, not just the privileged? How does it balance tradition with modernity, unity with diversity, security with freedom? These are the questions India faces daily, questions without easy answers. Yet, through every riot quelled, every insurgency negotiated, and every border guarded, India has proven one thing: its resilience. Conflict may scar the present, but it does not define the future. India continues to move forward, carrying both its wounds and its hopes, determined to turn challenges into strength, global role, and future outlook. On the global stage, India stands taller than ever before. Once dismissed as a land of poverty and chaos, it is now courted as a rising power, a voice of the global South, and a bridge between East and West. Its economy ranks among the world's largest, its military among the strongest, and its democracy among the most vibrant. India plays a pivotal role in the G20, the BRICS Alliance, and the United Nations, where it consistently calls for reform to give emerging nations a greater voice. Its space agency, ISRO, has stunned the world with cost-effective missions. From sending an orbiter to Mars on its first attempt, to landing near the lunar South Pole in 2023, a feat achieved by no other nation before. These are not just scientific triumphs. They are symbols of a nation determined to rise beyond the shadows of its past. Yet India's global role is not just about economics or technology. It is about identity. As the world fractures into competing powers, India positions itself as a balancing force. With the West, it shares democratic values. With the East, it shares cultural and historical ties. It maintains strategic partnerships with the United States and Europe, while also engaging with Russia, China, and its Asian neighbors. This delicate diplomacy reflects India's philosophy of non-alignment, born during the Cold War but adapted for a new multipolar world. At international forums, India speaks not only for itself but for the billions across Africa, Asia, and Latin America who seek development without domination, progress without exploitation. Domestically, India faces the twin realities of immense potential and daunting challenges. By 2030, it is projected to have the world's largest working age population, a demographic dividend that could fuel unprecedented growth, or, if mismanaged, create instability. Its digital revolution is rewriting how people communicate, trade, and dream, but questions of inequality, job creation, and education remain urgent. Environmental concerns are equally pressing: polluted rivers, deforestation, and the looming threat of climate change test the nation's commitment to sustainable growth. India has pledged to lead in renewable energy, aiming to become a global hub for solar power. But the path ahead requires more than ambition. It demands collective sacrifice and innovation. Culturally, India wields a soft power unmatched by most nations. Bollywood films captivate audiences from Cairo to California. Yoga and Ayurveda inspire global wellness movements. Indian cuisine flavors kitchens worldwide. Its diaspora, spread across continents, serves as ambassadors of heritage. An enterprise connecting India to the world in ways both personal and profound. This cultural influence is more than entertainment or tradition. It is India's reminder to the world that its identity is not just economic or political, but civilizational. A civilization that has endured for 5,000 years, carrying wisdom from the Vedas, resilience from centuries of struggle, and hope from its independence movement. As the sun sets on one era and rises on another, India stands at the threshold of destiny. The journey from the Indus Valley to independence, from colonial exploitation to economic resurgence, from conflict to global recognition is nothing short of epic. And yet, this is not the end of India's story. It is only another beginning. Challenges remain, yes, but so does possibility. For every shadow, there is a light. For every division, a dream of unity. For every struggle, a song of resilience. The world watches India not as a follower, but as a leader, a nation that carries within it the past of humanity and the promise of its future. The story of India is the story of endurance, transformation, and hope. And as long as its people believe, the journey of India will never truly end. You've just witnessed the epic story of India on Historic Horizon TV. But this is only one chapter of humanity's great journey. Subscribe now and join us as we uncover more lost civilizations, forgotten empires, and untold stories that shaped our world. History lives here, and the horizon is endless.